This is the science of stupid. Warning. You are about to witness acts performed without the benefit of scientific know-how. Laugh, but never imitate. These are misguided explorers lost in a world without science, with only blind bravery to guide them. We'll see the science that could have saved them, while we marvel at the principles of flight and the miracle of traction as the scientifically impaired rub up against friction and pump up the pressure, proving that only the universe and human stupidity are truly infinite. And that without science, there's no limit to what can go horribly wrong. Break out the first aid kit. It's the science of stupid. On this show, we'll see the after effects of Hooke's law and how you can increase your brain power. But first, this. A gentle breeze on a hot summer afternoon can be enormously refreshing. But sometimes, if the wind is strong enough, it can have devastating effects. Language. And it's not just cars. Maybe he's into fly fishing. Unfortunately, wind can occur when you least expect it.
Yeah, clobber. That's the most dangerous thing I've ever seen.
Really? I would say this is.
We are in a tornado.
I can't hear you. You're in a what? Well, what are you doing there? The fastest wind speed ever measured inside a tornado was just over 300 miles an hour, so it's quite evident how potent Mother Nature can be. Despite these warnings, people have still decided to harness that energy and use the wind for recreational purposes, such as kite flying. So if you don't want your kids to fly, you'd better listen to the science. Wind is caused by the uneven heating of the Earth's surface by the sun. As the heated air rises and cold air rushes in to replace it, wind is created. And it's this movement that you can use to fly a kite. When flying, dig your feet into the ground and lean back. The smaller the angle between the flyer and the ground, the less likely you are to be pulled over in a strong wind. Done correctly, you'll be a master of the sky. Done incorrectly, the wind will propel you into the sky and then into the ground. He looks like a big, strong lad, and he's trying to lean back. No, now he isn't. He stopped. Kite flying is so deadly, it's been banned in Pakistan. She's not in Pakistan, but probably should be banned from kite flying.
Yeah, watch this, Heidi. He's going to f*** your voice up.
Have a little faith in your friends.
Don't you know?
Oh, then again. Okay, so what went wrong? He starts well leaning back, but when that wind becomes too strong, he should run with the kite while still leaning back, not lean forward. At least he left an impression.
Look what he learned.
There's nothing quite like an open expanse of water in front of you and a couple of 100 horsepower behind you. The wind in your hair, salt in your nostrils, and the steering wheel in your face. So, boat owners, if you want your day on the water to be plain sailing. Pay attention to the science. Boats use the water's buoyancy to support them, but travelling through the water creates drag and slows you down. The way to avoid this drag is to get enough power to propel you across the surface of the water instead. This is called planing. The boat now comes into contact with the water less and can go faster. But as the front of the boat lifts, more air can get underneath, increasing instability. So, is putting a NASCAR-style V8 engine into a 13-foot aluminium boat and racing it at speeds of up to 80 miles an hour really a good idea? Yeah. Jet sprint boats, capable of such tight turns that the driver and navigator can experience a whopping 7 Gs every few seconds. With forces like that at play, lightning-fast reactions are a must. Especially for the spectators. Now, if you've got plenty of money and even larger white fronts, you can take it to the next level with a hydroplane. But before you do, remember this little fact. For every 10% increase in speed, there's a 20% increase in lift. So in seconds, the boat turns from a hydroplane into an aeroplane. This guy knows his stuff. The hull's touching the water with an area about the size of a handkerchief, reducing drag and increasing speed. But has he thought this through? Minimal water contact also reduces stability. At least there's nothing to bump into. Except that. Yeah. Maybe he wants to go into advertising? Well, he just did. With 3,000 horsepower, this hydroplane is barely touching the water. What can go wrong? Oh yeah, that. These 6,000-pound hydroplanes are the heavyweights of water sports, covering the space of a football field in a second. But remember, the less you touch the water, the more susceptible you are to this.
The boat's broken in half.
However fancy the boat, the physics remain the same. The moral of the story, if you can afford a powerboat, take care at speed. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's competition time. What scientific principle is this brave young physicist about to experience? Who managed to peek into the fate of this plucky physicist?
This is seesaw nutshot.
He's using the principle of the lever. You put weight on one side and get force out the other. So you really don't want to be standing there unless you want to reenact Tchaikovsky's famous ballet, The Nutcracker. According to a recent scientific study, someone who's practiced juggling for just 6 weeks increases the wiring in parts of their brain responsible for hand-eye coordination by almost 5%. But if they're so clever, why would they want to do something like this? But to be honest, extreme juggling acts like that are best left to highly trained professionals. Because when amateurs try to imitate the experts, things have a tendency to go wrong. And keep going wrong. To help people like him, here's some science. In essence, juggling comes down to simple projectile motion, with each ball following a neat parabolic arc. Move your hands in a rough figure-of-8 motion. Your right hand moves clockwise and your left hand moves counterclockwise with alternating tosses. The balls in the air are being pulled back down by gravity. If you double the height you throw them, they'll be falling 40% faster by the time you catch them. Newton's second law means the faster an object falls, the more impact force it generates when it lands. Once you've mastered your figure of eights, there's no limit to what you can juggle with. Though I'd strongly advise against trying this. Yeah. Oh yeah! Wonder what happened to his other fingers. It's also worth noting that any change in direction in your toss, even if it's just 1 or 2 degrees, can cause deviations of nearly a foot. And you should bear this in mind, especially when you're playing with fire. Oh, come on! Have you forgotten already? Throwing the clubs higher means they'll be travelling faster when they fall.
Okay.
No, his head hurts. In 1955, the Western world got its first glimpse of what would become bungee jumping when a National Geographic expedition to Vanuatu happened upon a group of local daredevils leaping from a wooden tower with a length of vine attached to their ankles. Since then, bungee jumping has become a worldwide phenomenon. Some bungees are made up of over 1,000 strands of elastic, allowing jumpers to dive from death-defying heights and survive. The current record is over 1,000 feet. That's the height of the Eiffel Tower. Bungee jumping is also attractive to practical jokers. Stop messing around and pay attention to the sides. Bungee cords are essentially springs. Hooke's law explains that the greater the force applied to the bungee cord, the longer it stretches. This stretching builds up elastic energy in the cord, creating the bounce. But too much force, like extra weight, and they'll overcome the elastic limit of the rope. And an understanding of that elasticity is especially important when jumping off a 360-foot bridge. Amazingly, this girl wasn't seriously hurt, but has ditched the extreme sports and taken up collecting porcelain frogs instead. That was an extreme demonstration of how the elastic limit of a bungee cord works. But you don't always need to go to such lengths, because the same rules apply whether you're jumping off a bridge or going horizontal. The problem with running on the ground is you'll never generate enough momentum for a good stretch. And if you are going to conduct an experiment like this, I'd avoid taping your arms down. It looks like a vertical fall is by far the best way to get a good stretch. But remember, bungee cords are bespoke bits of kit, so any cost-cutting exercises using homemade bungee can only end in disaster.
The ultimate bridge wedgie.
Underpants elastic could work. But only if he'd used it in the rope, not the harness. I wouldn't want to do his laundry. Hang about, how's he going to get down? Oh, I see. To stay upright or walk on 2 legs, the human body has a mind-blowingly complex system of mechanics and neuromuscular control. Just look what a well-balanced body and a healthy mind can do. In heels, for whatever reason. Well done. In fact, the human body is an inherently unstable system. Especially when you add alcohol.
Y'all watch, this is how you get on the saddle.
We're watching.
Grab hold of the saddle horn, grip your leg over.
Not content with over 2 million years of human evolution, some have decided to use their hands instead of feet for support. And in most cases, that's a bad idea. Hands are clearly not meant for walking, but if you do plan to turn the world on its head, pay attention to some science. A perfect handstand needs to adhere to 2 simple rules. Number 1, you'll need strength. Each arm will have to take a load of around 80 pounds for the average man. And secondly, you'll need balance. Your center of mass is around your navel, so you'll want to keep it directly above your base of support, in this case, your wrists, to avoid toppling over. To save you from any embarrassments, why not start practicing in the privacy of your bedroom? But don't forget, a perfect handstand requires strength. How much strength? More than that. Nothing to see here. Move along. When you're more confident, you can progress to your living room. It's probably worth remembering that falling on your head from a height of 1 meter carries a 50% chance of serious injury. Maybe she wants to be on the telly. But if a stable chair isn't up to scratch, what about an office chair? Oh, let's rewind. At this point, his center of mass is too far forward for the chair to remain stable.
You don't do that.
But some people aren't satisfied with just doing a handstand. They want to walk as well. This is a highly trained gymnast. Not only does he have extraordinary balance, but has bags of upper body strength allowing him to move from one hand to the next. As with the static handstand, he makes sure his weight is distributed evenly, in front and behind his wrists. This isn't a highly trained gymnast. He hasn't got bags of upper body strength, and he hasn't got extraordinary balance. In fact, I don't think he's a gymnast at all. In 1771, a French bloke called Nicolas Joseph Cugnot is said to have invented and built the world's first automobile, which he then drove into a wall. So I suppose he also invented the car crash. And despite leaps and bounds in road safety technology, we're still crashing today, especially when the temperature drops below 0. When roads are icy, the best advice I can give is don't drive. Why? Because when driving on ice, you're at least 10 times more likely to be injured. See? And it's not just cars you need to worry about. So if you want to avoid being another accident statistic this winter, pay attention to some science accompanied by some happy music. It isn't the ice that's the problem, it's the water that sits on top of it. In cold weather, a very thin layer reduces the friction between the road and the wheels. Sending too much power to the wheels means you'll overcome the tyre's adhesion limit and your wheels will spin. That lack of friction also makes steering very difficult, so a sharp turn like this is almost impossible. Instead, your actual path will be more like this. And it's the same with braking, as insufficient friction means you'll keep moving forwards until something else stops you. And one friendly piece of advice before you begin experimenting with friction: check the thickness of the ice. With the ice checked, it's time to begin driving. Done correctly, with no excessive acceleration or braking, friction and therefore traction is maintained and you'll move more safely across the ice. Done incorrectly, any excessive revving means you'll always have an uphill struggle. Or downhill. Just a struggle, really. And with hardly any friction between the tyres and the ice, any traction will be overcome by gravity. Meaning a road this icy should never be attempted. Even on foot.
Are you all right?
Once you manage to get on the open road, approach bends with caution. And remember, stopping's also a problem when there's no friction. Sometimes it's easier to understand scientific principles by going back to basics and using simple apparatus. And sometimes it's not. So let's recap. Snowy conditions create a layer of water between the tyres and the road, decreasing friction and making it difficult to steer and stop. OK, so shall we see that in action again? Here's a normal suburban road, transformed into a scene from Swan Lake, but with fewer tutus. Well, I'm assuming. I can't actually see the drivers. So make sure when steering, turning, or just coming to a stop, that you always have enough friction to overcome your inertia. Otherwise, the scene from Swan Lake turns into a scene from Carmageddon. So that's enough pratfalls into the world of pain. Please don't try any of this at home. But if you do, it's worth having the local hospital on speed dial.